So tips for watering during a drought. When it starts to get dry, then we need to start preparing for a drought. So always pay attention to the forecast. This map that you see right here of Missouri is the map of where the drought is. And I know that at one point I'm in Jefferson County. My county was yellow. Now it is white. So always pay attention to that drought if at all possible. So tips for watering. So what are some? One of the things we always like to suggest is water if at all possible in the morning. That enables the plants, if you have any water that gets onto the leaves of the plant. Remember, a lot of our diseases need water in some form in order to be able to grow and spread. So water in the morning, that enables our plants then to have the dryness of the sun throughout the day. And it enables it to go into the evening without having wet leaves. Water slowly and deeply water once a week, at least 1 inch of water. And this is really important because that way the water gets really deep into the soil. Water it at a slow pace that allows it to infiltrate on and into the water instead of just rolling down off of the water and not actually going deep in. So how you actually put the water on is extremely important. You can use what we call the screwdriver test. Just take a regular screwdriver and try to poke it down into the soil. The easier it goes in can indicate that there's moisture there, but it also can indicate that there's a lot of sand that might be there. Well, most of Missouri is not sandy, but we do have sections in the southeast part of our state where it can be a little bit more sandy. So know what your soil type is when you use that screwdriver test. Use a soaker hose or drip irrigation. This was a great picture where they did this with the soaker hose and just kind of went back and forth throughout their plantings. That's really, really good. Water at the base of the plants to avoid diseases, as I kind of mentioned just here. I don't have a soaker hose. I have 2 raised beds. And so I enjoy being out in the evenings and I will just sit there and just listen to my headphones or something and just slowly water my 2 raised beds of cut flowers and go about my evening. And that way the leaves are not getting wet. Pay attention to microclimates within your own yard and garden. This is a picture of my house. My house faces due south. So I took this picture this morning so you can see looking east. We see here I have some blooming anemones that I had planted this year. These 2 are going to be in the sun. Actually, all 3 of them are in the sun in the morning. My smoke tree is going to shade. The house will also shade. But in the late afternoon, you'll see this gap right here between the tree and the house. This one in particular gets the late afternoon sun as well. So not only does it get sun once, it gets sun twice a day. So I always have to make sure that this one here gets a little bit more attention than the other 2 fall blooming anemones. Stop fertilizing. If we're actually in a real big drought, you want to make sure you stop fertilizing. Fertilizing helps those plants to grow and to grow fast. And so by stopping the fertilization does not mean the plants are going to stop growing. It just means they're not going to grow fast. The faster they grow, the more water they actually need. So we're just slowing down their growth a little bit. Continue to weed because our weeds are going to be in competition for that moisture. Deadhead your flowers because, as was mentioned before, the plant wants to go to seed because it wants to reproduce itself. So if you go ahead, let the bloom there, and as soon as that bloom starts to go to seed, go ahead and take that flower head off because it uses a lot of moisture in order to produce those seeds for reproduction. So that helps to conserve water in the plant as well. Stop or reduce using any herbicides. If you don't pull weeds or hoe the weeds, you actually do herbicides. Of course, be very careful when you're using them, but in the hot weather in particular, an herbicide will actually kind of volatilate and go into a vapor of some sort, and there could easily be some drift that could affect the plants as well. Herbicides then are in the soil and there's not a lot of water in that soil where the weed will then absorb that herbicide into the plant to cause it to die back. Avoid using pesticides if at all possible, especially when it's hot and there's a drought. They're usually a spray that you're going to put onto the leaves on the top and the underside of the leaves. And so during the day, that makes the plant wet, but it also, because of the sun beating down on those leaves, can actually burn those leaves as well. So just pay attention to that when it comes to using your pesticides. Mulch, of course, we always want to mulch our plants if at all possible. I will admit my 2 raised beds don't have any mulch. Still waiting for those seedlings to really start to come up, and then I'll put some down because I don't want to cover up my seedlings. If you have containers or raised beds, make sure that you water them or look at them more frequently, simply because they're going to dry out. They're not actually in the ground where moisture is retained. So make sure you check those. Don't forget to water your bushes and your trees. Last year we had the drought. A lot of folks didn't water their trees or their bushes. And then we noticed this spring, a lot of people were calling our offices asking what was going on with their trees and bushes. And it was simply because they had the stress of the plant from not getting enough water, and then that real quick cold snap right before the holidays. And here is a great picture from the University of California that shows drought stress on a tree that's been newly planted. Probably it's still young. We always say, at least on campus, they water newly planted trees for 3 years in a row, even when it's not in a drought. Water trees usually at a drip line, because those root zones are growing out this way wherever there's a drip that's coming down from the plant. If you catch rainwater, that's something good that you can do if it's coming off of your roof. However, we recommend that you don't put it on any of your edible plants, because think about what's on the roof. You have roof tiles up there. You have any of those chemicals that might be on those shingles, but also remember, birds like to roost on the top. So we just want to make sure that your plants are healthy and not contaminated when you're going to be eating any of those fruits or vegetables. Definitely water your other plants with that water. It's a good idea to catch it when it does rain in a drought. And a lot of times we're seeing with our climate, we're noticing changes. There's a lot of deluge of that rain. So go ahead and capture that, but don't use it on your vegetables and fruits.